Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Siva Diandara. I will read the article from pronunciation subject with title Sleeping to Hurricane Helene. Last week, warning about the imminent arrival of Hurricane Helene. The National Weather Service in the Tallahassee, Florida used the word unsurvivable. And yet, the storm seemed to take much of the country by surprise. You might have too, not that long ago, that the arrival of extreme weather could wake us up. Belatedly from climate's complacency, but the dull drumbeat of disaster seems almost to be putting us to sleep instead. Even the imminent arrival of a catalysm like Helen, a Category 4 storm that spanned more than 400 miles across the Gulf Coast and threatened communities as far north as Apalachia, was enough to generate all that much attention ahead of time. When more might have been done to limit the devastation, the storm has so far produced at least 100 dead and perhaps $160 billion in damage, according to early estimates. In Florida, Big Bend regions, Helen was the third hurricane to make landfall in barely a year, flattening beach town and Barrier Island and sending water into the attic of homes as far away as Tampa Bay. In several states to the north, locals from dozens of communities hundreds of miles from one another were calling the storm our Katrina. Some of them watching whole homes or shiny cascade carried downstream. Others clinging to trees branches for hours on end waiting for the floodwaters to recede or help to arrive. In Tennessee, there was no emergency declared before hospital patients were evacuated from a rooftop by helicopter. And as of Saturday, across western North Carolina, hundreds of vulnerable power substations were still down, along with infrastructure and power lines meant to actually deliver electricity and the vast majority of the world's supply of high-purity quartz, a necessary input for the production of semiconductor. Dozens of coal ash ponds holding billions of tons of toxic coal ash have likely been flooded as well. Cars and trucks were tossed around like toys. Cars and trucks were tossed around like toys. 40 trillion gallons of rain fell into 40 trillion gallons of rain fell in total, the equivalent of one-third of the total volume of Lake Erie, enough to cover the entire state of Massachusetts in 23 feet of water. The intense rainfall was met over the last week, perhaps 50% more intense over parts of Georgia and the Carolinas by global warming. Other rapid assessments suggest it was perhaps only 20% more intense. Entire towns appear to have been turned into flotsam or pulverized into splinters. And view of those living in the hardest hit areas even carry flood insurance. In Asheville, NC, which sits hundreds of miles from the coastline and thousands of feet above sea level and is now the drowned ground zero of the storm. The National Flood Insurance Program cover rate was under 1%. Across the country, as many as 6 million more homes are at severe risk of flooding than are even included on the federal government's flood risk maps. Michael Thomas pointed out in the aftermath of the storm. Across Asheville's Bonchombe counties, 17 times as many homes had been judged at risk in the 100th year, flood even as carry insurance against that risk. Helen was called a thousand years flood for certain parts of the Southeast. Took those terms go less meaningful almost by the day. Another ostensible thousand-year storm had hit the coastal Carolinas just 1 week before. Sometimes, worst-case scenarios really do come to pass. The climate scientist Daniel Swansworth over the weekend on Sunday, and I think we often lack the collective imagination to fully envision what that looked like. What people can do, Justin Gillis and Hal Harvey describe the types of local activism that might be needed, while Saul Griffith pointed to how Australia saw the way on rooftop solar. Meanwhile, small change at the office may be one good way to cut significant emission right color gamma. American watching disaster footage from a distance, collapsed bridges and disappeared road. Asheville submerged by sludgy brown floodwater. Wondered how hurricane might produce such devastation so far from shore and so high up in the mountain. They use the word unprecedented and unthinkable, and grimly recall silly rankings of so-called climates happen. Often fraudsters in partnership with a real estate broker, which named Asheville as a top choice destination for those seeking safety from extreme weather. In conversation and on social media, they suggest, as they had with flood, informant, and orange sky in New York last summer, that the lesson of Helen is that no hair is safe from climate disaster. In EC, bearing the headline published in Politico, was present by Chevron. The realism may not be quite so grim, so it also demand more of us. To the extent we might enjoy safety and stability in a world every more pockmarked by climate's impact. It won't be because we casually circled have on maps, but because we built and designed them ourselves. Helen gives one vision of the future, with the storms carrying a whole region and imposing perhaps a decade of recovery. But in the truth, as extraordinary as a devastation might seem, this kind of flooding in this kind of setting was not unthinkable, or for that matter, even unprecedented. Indeed, it happened in western North Carolina 1916, 1916, and Hurricanes Camille 1969 and Agnes 1972. Our additional cautionary tales for those with forest or not memories. There was similar spectacular flooding nearly simultaneously in Kathmandu, Nepal, on the other side of the planet, where nearly 150 have died and landslides have flattened whole neighborhood after half a year's rainfall in 2 days in a city twice as high up in the mountain and twice as far from the coast of Asheville. This day, even ubiquitous news stories produce some amount of lamentation that nobody is covering this since everyone loves to post media criticism and in an endless scroll it's easy now to find sufficient strawmen. We heard a lot about social media's echo chambers, but its greatest trick is showing you stuff to get outraged about, including the appearance, indifference, or lack of interest of others. At first, over the weekend, word of Helen's devastation crisscrossed the country almost by whisper, in part because the view in position to observe the greatest damage firsthand lacked cellular and internet connection with which to transmit their picture, and in part because national media had not quite anticipated the scale of destruction and local media took heroic was only capable of so much. Soon, now the storm claimed a foothold on the country's front page and the national consciousness, but by then it was hard to escape the impression that as natural disaster and extreme weather even pile up in our pits, they are somewhat losing their saliency as a cultural force, producing less a sense of rupture reality than more quotidian dis, disruption, even rescinding from view as a first consequence of ubiquitous back-to-back hurricanes, thousand-year floods, the return of urban firestorm. Many of these grim disasters seem to loom large of horrifying long-term prediction that they do as actual weather, even they are presently leaving whole population devastated in their wake. As Helen Floodwater retreated, liberal point to the threats of advance warning and disaster relief posed by Project 2025, emphasizing how uninterested in relief Donald Trump was as president. After Hurricane Matthew hit North Carolina, he released only 1% of the state's requested relief, and he had hoped to cut the federal disaster response budget aggressively, proposing cut to FEMA of more than 60%. Trump faulted President Biden for supposedly ignoring calls from Gov. Brian Kemp of Georgia last week. Two Kemp, in fact, praised the president for his responsiveness, and across the political spectrum come criticism of state leaders and federal authorities, from those watching the humanitarian disaster in person or took their phones and wanting to pin responsibility for in it on emergency response in action. The thing is, there was action. Disaster response is a jury-rigged patchwork, imperfect at best and deeply in need of reform, as the disasterologist Samantha Montano, among others, has emphasized. But the tragedy of Helen is not that nobody arrived in its wake to help, because people have. The tragedy is that the storm did more and got there first. The pattern is by no familiar, but the country has seemingly chosen not to be prepared as much as grow ignorant. Next, I will explain to you about the consonant and the vowels that we got from the article. First, surface, 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 surface. 2. O. Storm, 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 storm. 3. A. Dal, 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 dal. E. Tree, 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 tree. E. Fell, 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 fell. E. Even, 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 even. A. Day, 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 day. A. Top, 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 top. Oi. Enjoy, 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 enjoy. U. footage, 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 footage. Next, the consonant. D, disaster, 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 disaster. K, hurricane, 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 hurricane. G, gallon, gallons, 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 gallons. R, risk, 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 risk. Thousand, 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 thousand. Bridge, 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 bridge. N, nearly, 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 nearly. L, grimly, 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 grimly. P, pause, 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 pause. Sh, s, shiny, 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 shiny. And I will make the sentence from the consonant and vowel word. First, the vowels. Storm. The house collapsed due to the strong storm last night. Consonant. Grimly. The man looked grimly at the ruins of his house. Okay, that's all that I can say for you, and I think that's it. Thank you very much. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.